What's up, Smark Nation? Today I want to break down a new Netflix docuseries called Mr. McMahon. It dives into his life and career, and only Vince McMahon. So here are my initial reactions to the actual documentary itself. So I sat down, originally just trying to watch 2 episodes. I ended up watching the whole docuseries in one sitting. So it's not that fresh in my mind, but I was hooked. I got really hooked, and it was an engaging docuseries. Vince's rise in the wrestling industry, how that all came about, the controversies and the legal battles. It was just engaging and compelling. I really enjoyed, and I think they did a pretty good job on telling the story of Vince, the promoter. But it barely scratches the surface of his recent, more serious allegations in regarding to the sexual harassment and the NDAs that were going on and stuff like that. So it really missed its mark on touching on that. But I get it, because Raw is going to move to Netflix very shortly. And it really tiptoes around Vince's recent scandals and his successes. WrestleMania 1, it touched about his whole back history and how he bought it from his father, how he made it national, global, and just his ability to be a businessman, overcome adversity, and adapt within the wrestling business. But given everything we know about him, it just feels like that was a pretty big missed opportunity on the producers, and is maybe making a 7th episode to add some more depth into the documentary. It does stay on the surface and never really takes a hard look at these recent allegations. Vince McMahon, as a character and as a man, that came up a lot. One aspect I did find interesting was where does Mr. McMahon stop and Vince McMahon begins? It seems like everybody was telling me that's pretty much who he is, or telling the documentary, the producers, that's pretty much who he is. Some of them said the volume turned up. Some of us said what you see on screen is what you get in real life. And I think at the end of the documentary, he says, I don't know. Decent job of showing how his on-screen persona started to blend with his actual real life. There's a whole fine line that sometimes art imitates life and life imitates art. And, he got lost in his character, I think, at some point when things started to spiral. But that still doesn't excuse his behaviors and all the stuff that he supposedly did, and some evidence against what he did do, and all those allegations against him. So that doesn't give him a free pass on being just a terrible human being. One thing I did find interesting was the story with Shane that I really didn't know about. I don't know if it was Paul Heyman during that part, but he said they were eating, and then Shane proposed the direction he wanted the company to go, and Vince is like, no, you're gonna have to stab that knife into my chest or buy me out like my dad did. I'm like, man, that's just crazy. But the documentary didn't change my opinion on Vince at all, or how I view Vince McMahon, just not in the slightest. If anything, it did reinforce my opinion of him in the beginning. On one hand, I think we all have to acknowledge his contributions to the wrestling industry. That's first and foremost. He was the mastermind behind taking WWF from a territory to making it what it is now, a global juggernaut. When it comes to the business, he's undoubtedly the driving force around that. But on the other hand, as we stated before, as a person, I have a pretty low opinion of him. And it's not because he thinks he's Mr. McMahon or whatever. And there was just some appalling stuff, like he has 3 computers, and one thinks business-wise, one thinks this way, and something fun and sexual. That's just wild, and all that stuff. I did like Hogan's take on stuff. Hogan's always crazy. He said something about everybody used to do steroids. It was like going to Starbucks. There were some really entertaining parts. But something that really got to me was his refusal, like I said, brought up the Shane stuff, his refusal to pass the business on to Shane or any of his children, obviously. At the end of the day, he sold it to Endeavor, TKO Holdings. I think that was the right move because they have great people in place to run a global entertainment company like the WWE. But at the end of the day, this documentary felt more like a promotional piece for WWE's future on Netflix. It did just enough to get my intrigue and keep me intrigued and keep the fans intrigued, I think, but not enough to really explore, the allegations to the full extent of Vince's current allegations. Like I said, they should definitely touch on that more, or in controversies that are surrounding around Vince McMahon. And this is just my little brief thoughts on the Mr. McMahon documentary. Should you watch it? Yeah, I think you should go and watch it. It's pretty intriguing, entertaining, especially if you don't know too much about Vince's past and things of that nature and how all this came about. But if you're a hardcore fan and follow, wrestling, you're not going to get much out of it. It's still going to be intriguing because it's a wrestling documentary, but you're probably going to know everything that's, that happened in the past with the lawsuits and, everything of that nature, the controversies, how he came to be, how, the WWE came to be, the different eras and all that stuff. So I don't think that most diehard fans or in-web fans or wrestling fans won't get too much out of this, and just not to expect any groundbreaking revelations. But at the end of the day, I will definitely say go watch the documentary and give me your thoughts. What do you think? What do you think they should have done different? What do you think they did well? I think it was a pretty solid documentary. I was expecting a little more, like I said, diving into his more recent allegations and controversies. But if you haven't already, leave me a like, subscribe to the show, and comment your thoughts. This is my first long form of content, so please, thank you guys for watching this video, and